Hi, I'm Nussbaumber from Macrobeat.co.uk. Well, we had a really interesting week with a lot of twists and turns. Usually, the flip-flop around the trade talks in the US, where we have like good news, bad news, and the market was really all over the place. The same is true for Brexit. Very bearish news early in the week, and then suddenly since yesterday we get all these fresh hopes after Mr. Johnson has met the Irish Prime Minister. And now it suddenly seems there's like fresh optimism going on. Overall, we really don't know. The market has built in a lot of optimism in terms of the US trade talks. Equities are beat, risk FX is beat. In the UK, we have like sterling that rallied about 2% in the last 24 hours. So there's a lot of hope, but all the hope is really based around just stories. We don't really have any facts whatsoever. The first possible facts we might get is later this morning, Mr. Barclay and Mr. Barnier, the two Brexit negotiators, are meeting. Maybe there's some press conference after that to see whether there is a workable solution out there right now. And in the terms of the US, at 7:45 UK time, we have the Vice Chair Liu from China is meeting Mr. Trump. And then we see whether or not they reach any sort of agreement there. So we have to wait probably most of the day to actually see if the optimism is justified. I want to have on the first slide a quick look into the real economy first, as we might almost forget that where we see the US CPI that was out yesterday. This is a chart of the headline CPI. Obviously, the Fed is watching more the core CPI, but on the headline CPI, we definitely see that CPI has peaked and is continuing to move lower. Core CPI still stuck at 2.4%, so we don't really have the same relief just there yet. In terms of what's been happening this week, on the next slide, we see the euro-dollar. Euro-dollar, the interesting part is after it was sort of down and out after the ECB moved to QE2, we now suddenly see the chance of a breakout on the top side around this 110 area that actually is more of a dollar story than a euro bull story. To show some more of that, on the next slide, we see the dollar index. I've been talking about it for the last several weeks, and I've been waiting for this dollar to roll over, and it now suddenly starts to look as if there is an actual chance for this to happen. So this 98.60 area where we trade right now is really the key going into whether later today or into next week, where the dollar suddenly could actually start to roll over, more out of other factors as well in terms of having a sharp rallying cable. We have this sort of recovery and risk, which puts a little bit pressure on the dollar. So suddenly we just might actually get a dollar break while the market is focusing on other stories, which actually is quite interesting. On the next slide, just to quickly mention sterling, and I made that chart maybe an hour ago. In the meantime, we have traded quickly up to 125. So the optimism isn't going away. The one thing to say about this story is as much optimism as we try to build in. Reality is, even if there is a workable solution, even if there is a compromise solution, we do not yet know whether Boris Johnson have enough votes in Parliament to actually get the deal through. So all this optimism could really, fade rather rapidly at some point. But in the short term, the market is excited, and this is what's happening, and it's hard to stand against. As we know, if we were to get a Brexit deal done before the October 31st, and if that means we actually leave with a deal, sterling has a lot of upside potential, it's no doubt. But whether we get a deal or not, we have to wait and see. On the last slide, this is dollar CNH. Dollar CNH is obviously the sort of main area of interest now where we have the trade talks in the US. We have broken below 710 this morning, which was always a little bit a marker for myself to try and judge the situation. And I would think if we stay below 710, there's a real chance that there is actually something coming tonight on the trade talks, and that could actually send dollar CNH quite a bit lower. What the market may not yet have figured out, or maybe I'm wrong, but there could be a chance that if dollar CNH would be moving significantly lower, this is not only a support maybe for risk, but it actually could mean that the dollar is actually moving lower on a broad base, including the G10 area. So we wait for tonight for a result from the trade talks, and we wait for the Brexit talks. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you, and bye-bye.